Welcome to Trash Talk with Trista, a podcast from Ramsey, Washington Recycling and Energy. I am Executive Director Trista Martinson. Here on Trash Talk with Trista, we'll explore the people, partnerships, and innovative ideas helping transform waste into valuable resources while building a healthier communities and more sustainable future. Today, we're joined by Andy Weins, founder and visionary of Camo Crew Responsible Removal. Together, we'll discuss leadership, resilience, entrepreneurship, and why the people behind the waste and recycling industry make such an important difference in our communities. Andy Weins is the founder and visionary behind Camo Crew Responsible Removal, committed to responsible junk removal, recycling, and donation services. Before becoming a business owner, Andy proudly served more than 20 years in the United States Army, including over a decade as a master resilience trainer, helping soldiers and leaders develop resilience, communication skills, and leadership under pressure. In 2023, Andy was recognized nationally as one of the National Waste and Recycling Association's 40 Under 40 leaders for his contributions to the industry. He's also a 6-year member of Vistage, an executive leadership organization, and the author of 2 books, Stop Avoiding Your Numbers and Words Effing Matter, which focus on financial leadership, communication, and organizational success. Andy, welcome to Trash Talk with Trista. We're so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So most people know you today as the founder of Camo Crew, but your journey started in the military. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
I wanted to join the military in high school. I wasn't able to for medical things, and then by 2004 I was able, so I joined. At that time, I couldn't go into combat, so I joined as a truck driver. And by 2006, I found myself in Iraq, so I volunteered to go to Iraq. So I did a tour in Iraq, 2006 to 2007. And over time, over the last 20 years, it's not a straight path, as we talked about before the podcast, in the military. And so turned into a tour to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, 14, 15. And then during that deployment, I decided that military life wasn't for me in the traditional sense. So I became a career counselor, which focuses on the soldier versus the Army per se. And so it's allowed me to continue to serve soldiers. And then during that period, because of the military, I was able to get my education, buy my first house, launch my business, all as additional benefits to being in the military.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the resiliency training that you did. What does that mean, and what did you do, and how did you help soldiers and leaders?
So it's a 80-hour course I took, and then I was a master resiliency trainer for our unit, so I taught resiliency to soldiers, so teaching them 14 different skill sets on how to be more mentally resilient, because that's something lacking in our world, and it's all about self-development. That's what it comes down to. It's the Army's brand of self-development, and through that, I understood the power of language, power of question asking, which led to my first book and then my second book. It's really led me as a leader to better understand where people are coming from, whether it's our employees, leaders within the organization, our customers, or vendors, to better understand where people are coming from and how to ask better questions so we can get the most out of each other. And so I would not have gone on this path of self-discovery without it. The first hour of that class, they said asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. And after 10 years in the military, that was my aha moment, that exact moment. Because up until that point, I thought that it was my job as a military leader, business owner, man, right, to have all the answers. And now here's someone giving me permission to not have the answers, really to work with the people around me to come up with the best solutions.
Yeah, you're right. There's so many lessons in the military. Some are good, some not so good. But the one thing we did get right was resilience, and we've actually implemented that same program now at Ramsey, Washington Recycling and Energy for our employees, because both myself and our facilities director, Sam Hall, are Army veterans. And so we said, the one thing we could really use, and it applies to the waste world, it applies to industry, it applies everywhere. So it's really great opportunity, and I'm glad you took that. But let's talk a little bit about waste. Most kids don't grow up dreaming about getting into the waste industry. So what attracted you to this work?
So I was that kid. I grew up in the waste world. So perspective wise, my father owns a remodeling business, and he would bring home faucets and doors and lock sets and things of that nature. They'd always be on the trailer in the driveway. My dad's also a picker and a self-proclaimed recycler from day one, and so he grew up on a farm where they kept everything and found use for everything. And so I grew up with that mentality. And so in the driveway, that trailer that always had ferrous and non-ferrous metal on it, on Saturdays and Sundays, I would sit there and take things apart and then to the scrapyard every other week or so on a Saturday morning. And that was my favorite place in the whole world. The smells and sounds of men working, dirt and the grease, all of it, I loved it. And so I loved it. So my father is extremely influential, the most influential person in my life to get me into this industry. I did my 7th grade science fair project on recycling. So I really did want to better understand and be in this industry. So I had these two paths. I wanted to be in radio, and I wanted to be in the waste and recycling world. And I was able to accomplish both in my life. So I guess that was good. The childhood me nailed it. And so growing up, I wanted to be there. And then it wasn't this very linear path where, I got a degree in environmental services or whatever. I got back from Iraq in 2007, started working for my father's company. 2 days before Christmas in 2008, I got laid off from my father's company. In January of 2009, not a great time to go get a job. Mm-hmm. And so I started driving around the northwest side of Milwaukee, picking up appliances on the side of the road. Here we are 17 years later.
Wow. So you turned a need for recycling and maybe a little extra cash at a low point into a full-scale business. Yeah. That's amazing. And how big is your company now?
We'll do north of $3 million top-line revenue, almost 40 employees, 25,000 square foot facility, 18 trucks.
Wow.
I'm a numbers guy.
That's fantastic. So that's a tremendous growth. What lessons have you learned along the way about building a successful business and the culture?
One lesson that came to mind recently, so I in addition to the books, I do, I'm a keynote speaker, I do workshops, and that's really the trajectory of my career and why opportunities like this as a podcast is so important, is to get the message out there about resiliency and conflict is what I speak on. And the lesson I've learned that I'm really leaning into heavily now is as a business leader, as a father and a husband, and even as a keynote speaker, when I come into a room, it's my opportunity to be the foundation, not the ceiling. So often as a business leader, military leader, kind of what I said before about not having all the answers, I looked at our business as it can only grow as smart as I am, only as tall as I am, only as much knowledge as I have. I had that mindset for years, and I ran the company that way. And now more recently, the last 2 years, 2.5 years, I've really embraced the power of the room. And so now I'm no longer the ceiling, I'm the foundation. So when there's problems to be solved, even though I probably have the answer because I had the experience, it's better for me to hear another solution. And when I hear a different solution, the solution might not be as well thought out or as good as my solution. Could be, certainly. Ego gets in the way. And yet it's better for the overall organization to let the individual members of the organization go down that path, because it's that strategic part of allowing people to make the choices and make decisions, those soft skills that really are building the company that I have now, the company I really want it to be someday. So that's the lesson there. As a leader, your job is to be the foundation of knowledge, not the ceiling.
I love that. I'm thinking about our time in the military, and there was a saying that my mentor had was, you can only lead as far as you've gone. But you've kind of flipped that around to say you can lead as far as your team can lead, right? So that's really fantastic. So you were named one of waste and recycling industry's 40 under 40 leaders. What excites you most about where our industry is headed?
The opportunity we have in the sales industry, and why I'm so excited, is because people give us stuff every day for free. That was my journey back when I was in 7th grade in the science fair, 2009 to this date today, is that give us resources. And as soon as we start looking at material not as waste, when we start looking at the material as resources, what a gift. People are giving us stuff that has value. I own a company, Camo Crew Responsible Removal. We removed the word junk from our name last year because we no longer want to look at things as junk. And recently I bought a house and we have some trees in the backyard I want to cut down, so I need a chainsaw. So I went to my warehouse, and within 2 weeks I got 3 chainsaws. I took the 3 chainsaws to the hardware store. He's like, this is the one we're fixing. He's like, new, it's about $500. I can get this thing tuned up and fixed for less than $150. So what a great opportunity. The average junk removal company would have thrown those chainsaws into the landfill. A decent junk removal company probably would have recycled them, non-ferrous metal. And yet our company, because of our processes, we'd already put it aside. We would have donated it. And now I was able to take home a resource, save myself money, take care of my family, all because I looked at the material people are paying us to get rid of as a resource. And that is a microcosm of this industry. So whether it's recyclables like aluminum cans, right, or a chainsaw, there are opportunities everywhere. And the key is to shift our mind from waste to resource.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I will say, and I appreciate the responsible removal part so much. At Ramsey, Washington, we have a material recovery facility, and the junk haulers are there every day, and it is the bane of my existence. I watch them dump things that are perfectly usable, could have been reused, could have been refurbished on our floor, but once it hits the floor, we can't take it back. And so we're really thinking about how do we motivate other folks in the industry? Because they do serve a purpose. People need stuff removed. They need basements cleaned out. They need grandma's house cleaned out. But how do we do it in a way that's responsible and really thinking about putting it back into circulation and not going to landfill? So I appreciate that so much. And anything you can do to help others in that way, I'm here for it. Because it is, we see so much that just gets wasted and it shouldn't be. And so also would love to strategize on some ways we can deter that in the future. Okay, let's talk about your books. Why do leaders need to stop avoiding their numbers? You said you're a numbers guy. You've written a book about it. Let's talk about it.
Because numbers are truth. And we as humans, we love stories. And we love telling stories. And we love telling ourselves stories. And we can convince ourselves of anything, right? Because our brains cannot differentiate between reality and stories we're telling them. That's why TV and movies are when you're watching a movie, for example, your heart races, even though the reality is you're in a room and it's the screen. There's nothing affecting it. So the power of our mind is spectacular. So when we input facts, and numbers never lie, then we start making decisions consistent with what the numbers are telling us. Because as entrepreneurs and most business leaders, we get into business, especially small business owners, we get into business because we're dreamers. We have this great idea and we convince ourselves how amazing it is. And we surround ourselves with people that convince us how amazing it is. And the reality is 85% of small business owners fail within 10 years. And the number one reason, or the only reason organizations go out. This goes for profit, nonprofit, NGOs, you name it. The reason why businesses fail across the board is one reason and one reason only. They run out of money. And now there's thousands, an infinite amount of reasons why you run out of money. Poor hires, inventory, poor cash management, bad sales, whatever the case may be. And so the number one killer of businesses is the one thing people avoid the most. I was a consultant years ago, and I would speak on the 6 disciplines of business: marketing, sales, operations, the thing you do, resources that are human, and then the numbers. I've done thousands of surveys, thousands. The lowest rate of those 6 disciplines across small business owners, especially here in the Midwest, is numbers. And so the thing that I embrace the most, the thing that comes most natural to me, the thing that tickles my curiosity, right, is the cause and effect. Okay, I'm doing this, and what is the result of me doing this thing? And a lot of people get confused. They think numbers. They're like, oh, it's my financials. I don't know. My tax guy give me the packet every quarter. And I look at it and I'm like, great, I have no idea what this means. That's not it. Numbers are everywhere. So for example, at Camo Crew, we track every single cubic yard of material that comes into our ecosphere. Last year, we recovered 81.7% of all material. That's interesting. That's a great number. Now we're going to track it this quarter and last quarter. We're going to track it this year, compare it time over time. We track how many pounds that we're recycling. When we send out a load, a semi of mattresses, we can report back from the company that sends us exactly how many cubic yards we recovered, and then breaks the cubic yards into weights. How much weight, how much wood, metal, fabric, foam, all got recovered from that load. Those numbers tell a story.
Yeah.
The question or your statement before was, how do we get people excited? We as humans are genuinely curious. We love games. We love tracking. I drive a Tesla. It has full self-driving. Now it'll tell me how many miles of a streak I'm on when I'm driving. Like it makes no difference. I self-drive because it's super convenient, and yet I'm like, oh, I want to get my number higher. Why? Because and then there's something, and maybe this will be my next book, right? Why are we obsessed with numbers? And so now all of a sudden it's changing my behaviors.
That's right.
And so how do you get people excited, right? You have called junk haulers, like people coming in the MRF, the Recycles Recovery Facility. How do we get them excited about, keeping material out of the landfill, out of the MRF? How do we get them excited about recovering it before it even hits the floor? Because once it hits the tipping floor, it's no longer a resource. It turns into a commodity, and that's a waste. That's right. Because again, that's the
Yeah.
And then you can develop processes. We have a relatively new marketing team at our company, and they were interviewing me the other day to better understand how we got to where we're at and how we're different than the rest of the industry. And it's one thing: we have box trucks. We have box trucks and we have dump trucks. So when we're on the job site, we sort the material that's destined for the transfer station, ultimately the landfill, or the MRF, or to the metal recycling facility. I'm really teaching myself not to say scrapyard anymore, because one of my mentors, and I love saying scrapyard because that's how I grew up. Anyways, the metal recovery facility, or metal recycling facility, those materials go on to our dump trucks, and it's a singular destination. Everything else goes onto our box trucks, and those box trucks come back to our facility where we have a dock, and they get unloaded. And we look like a logistics company using pallets and gaylords and carts, not a waste and recycling company that's putting things into a truck that gets dumped, and now it's on a tipping floor. Once it's a tipping floor, that's the exact moment it no longer has an opportunity to have that type of value.
Exactly.
Now it's all mixed. So how do we avoid it on the tipping floor? Well, don't put it in the dump truck in the first place. And now the mind, it's like, well, if I don't put it in the dump truck, what do I do? A box truck. Well, when I put it in a box truck, I'm going to load it by hand. I'm going to unload it by hand. And when I unload it by hand, it's the second opportunity I have to make a conscious decision to put it somewhere. We have a company in the junk removal industry that has box trucks with moving blankets on it, because we want to make sure that we protect all the resources that we get into our ecosphere. And to your question is, how do you get people motivated? What we do is more difficult. It is more processes. It takes a lot more vendors. It takes a lot more energy. From a numbers perspective, my disposal rate is less, and my, for industry average, obviously, and my cost of goods sold, the labor my guys do, even though it's more work, it's actually less, because of box trucks. I'm not driving as much. There's less windshield time, because we can charge a premium to our customers because they know where we're going to cover it, right? So does it take a lot more work? Yeah. I spent a number of years, I had a podcast screaming out to the industry, let's do things different. Let's do things better. And our industry isn't ready.
Right.
Our industry continues to tell me, and they would call me, and I would do consulting. Well, how can I get more jobs? How can I make more money? Very rarely is it, how can I recover more? How can I get a bigger facility? But they would ask those questions and yet not execute.
Right.
But they wanted to do that, and yet dollars and dimes of the commodity that is waste, too lucrative.
That's right. So we've got some work to do. Unfortunately, we're already out of time. Look how fast that went, Andy.
Wow, that was so quick.
It was so fast. So we're going to have you back to talk more about your other book and where we're going. But I think we leave this on a really good point, is that the waste industry is lucrative, and we need to change something in that system so that people do the right thing. And the numbers will speak for it if they just give it time to look at the numbers. So I'm with you there. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I'm going to have you back because we barely touched the surface here on the conversation, but I think that is a key point. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Trash Talk with Trista. Every conversation reminds us that waste isn't just something to throw away. It's an opportunity to recover resources, protect our environment, strengthen our communities, and build a more sustainable future. Whether you're recycling a little more, preventing waste before it starts, supporting innovative technologies, or simply sharing what you've learned today, every action makes a difference. Until next time, I'm Trista Martinson, and remember, today's trash could be tomorrow's resource. Thank you so much.